Merry Christmas. It's Christmas Day 2020. I thought I'd talk a little bit today about traditions and the value of traditions. First, let me mention that President Trump has vetoed the military appropriations bill. And one reason he did that is because it had an amendment in it that will require that the military bases that are named for Confederate generals have their names changed within 3 years. Uh, I think what he's really doing here is making a statement about the value of tradition. And I know his critics, call him racist and all that sort of thing. But I feel that he's making a statement about the value of tradition, and I applaud him for it. I've already written my two senators and my Congress lady, telling them I want them to vote for sustaining that veto, not against it. Don't, let that veto stand. Of course, they won't. They won't. Two of them are Republicans, one's a Democrat. But nonetheless, I've done it. And I've got me to thinking about Christmas traditions. And I've lived in other places aside from here in Florida. I lived in Chicago and New York, and I visited around the country. My best, I think some the memories that I have where Christmas is celebrated in a way that sort of captures the attention of everyone present is in Chicago and New York. On Fifth Avenue in New York, you have the Salvation Army guys collecting money, and the bell ringers there. It's very much the same in Chicago. Although I've traveled to places like San Francisco and Boston, I don't know that I've been there on Christmas. I wouldn't be surprised if they have the same sort of thing in those cities. The other cities are typically too much oriented towards the automobile to have that kind of thing. But maybe so. I may be wrong about that. But I do want to also just mention that there has been traditionally uh, a difference between the North and the South on the matter of Christmas. Southerners celebrated Christmas. Northerners, particularly those characterized by those in Massachusetts, did not. 1607 is when the Virginia colony was founded in the little town of Jamestown. Uh, and the Plymouth colony, Massachusetts, was founded in 1620, toward the end of the year in December. So there's about 13 years difference between them. The Puritans that founded the Massachusetts Bay Colony did not celebrate Christmas. As a matter of fact, the first governor of the colony, when he caught some children celebrating Christmas on Christmas Day, he confiscated their toys or their sporting implements or whatever they had, and told them that they could not celebrate Christmas. It was the wrong thing to do. Then later in 1659, Massachusetts Bay Colony officially outlawed any celebration of Christmas whatsoever. Now, what's interesting, 22 years later, they repealed that ban, and it's what's interesting to me is that it seems when the people in control develop a sense of moral superiority to everyone else, and they adopt, uh, you know, that they require that everyone abide by their moral stricture. In the case of Massachusetts Bay Colony, no celebration of Christmas, which is kind of a there's room for allowing people to have different points of view there, but the people in control that no, we're not, no, you can't celebrate Christmas, no, period. It's very similar to what we're seeing now. You can't have your Confederate monuments, you can't have your Confederate statues. It's racist. We don't care if you don't think it's racist. We think it's racist. Therefore, you can't have them. They can't be anywhere. And, you can put them on private property until we, condemn the private property through eminent domain, and that's happening. That's happening with people that have Confederate battle flags along Interstate 95 in the South. Nonetheless, when they get that strict over, their some sort of sense of moral superiority, in the case of Massachusetts Bay Colony, they repealed it 22 years later. And in the last century, we got very strict about the consumption of recreational use of alcoholic beverages, and we had 13 years of prohibition. It was repealed. So maybe all this uh, Black Lives Matter, anti-Southern, essentially, is racism. Maybe that will run its course too, and it'll be repealed, but we'll see. But uh, even up into the Civil War in Massachusetts, Massachusetts did not make Christmas a legal holiday until 1856. Although Virginia made it, it was officially recognized by the colony of Virginia sometime around 1650. I mean, officially. Uh, what's that, 200 years earlier than Massachusetts or more? 200 years or more earlier than Massachusetts. And Christmas was not recognized as a federal holiday until 1870. Even in the antebellum South, the slaves were permitted to celebrate Christmas. So I think that shows you a little bit about the difference there. Now, in terms of those of you that are interested in Civil War history and Civil War historians, there is a Civil War historian who wrote a Christmas story that became and still remains famous. Philip Van Dorn Stern, he wrote a number of books. This one he did on secret missions of the Civil War. And this one is an illustrated biography of Robert E. Lee by Philip Van Dorn Stern. Let's see if I can, I don't know if you can, now you can't quite see the name there, but during the Depression, or maybe toward the end of the Depression, he had a dream, and he wrote a story about, his dream was about a man who was so depressed that he wished he had never been born. And I don't know whether he made the title of the story "The Man Who Never Was" or something like that. Anyway, he after this dream, he woke up in the morning and he wrote it down and refined it over a period of time. He thought he had a good short story, so he sent it out to many publishers and places like the Saturday Evening Post. In those days, they would publish short stories. And he got no interest. So after about 3 or 4 years, he wrote it up and had it printed at his own expense, and he included it in his Christmas cards for his Christmas card list. One of the people on the list was a Hollywood agent. Her job was to find good scripts for Hollywood movies. She liked it. So she sold it to one of the studios, and they didn't do anything with it for a while. In the meantime, the Saturday Evening Post did like it. And I think they eventually published it after he'd already sold the film rights. And it became a movie that we still watch today, which is, what is that name of that movie? It's a Wonderful Life. And the interesting thing about that is not only was it written by a Civil War historian based upon a dream that he had, but the movie, even though it's beloved today, it kind of got that way by accident, because even though it won Academy Awards, I think it did, when it was released, it certainly had some nominations for it. It just didn't click with the public at that time. And as a result, the owner of the film let the copyright lapse. And when the copyright lapsed, well, then the TV stations felt, hey, here's something we can run on Christmas Eve, when nobody wants to come into work. And it doesn't cost us anything. It's in the public domain. So they started running the movie on Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, around Christmas. And gradually, people got attracted to it. I mean, the true merits of the story began to be appreciated. And that's the story of It's a Wonderful Life. It remains popular today. Sometimes father and son or the entire family may watch it, every Christmas. But that finally leads me to a recommendation for a Christmas movie that I'd like to cover with you. The name of it is Three Godfathers. Now, there's various Hollywood versions of it. The one that the most important thing to remember is do not watch the John Wayne version. Do not watch the John Wayne version. The version that I think is best is one that was made during the early 30s. The actor that is best known in there is Walter Brennan, and the three Godfathers happen to be three outlaws in the West. And he's one of the outlaws, but he's just a simple-minded outlaw. He just sort of fell in with two other bad guys, and they could get him to do whatever they wanted. And what they do is toward Christmas Day, they ride into a town, stake out the bank, and rob the bank. As they're riding away, a posse comes after them, and they can't get away from the posse. So eventually they decide what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to try and get across a almost forbidden desert. It has only one water hole to the next safe spot. And if we go into that desert, there's a good chance they won't follow us. So they do. They go into that desert, and they're right. The posse it's too risky. We want to catch them, but it's too risky to go in there and risk our own lives. So as they're crossing the desert, they've shaken off the posse, and they're heading towards the water hole. They get as they approach the water hole, they find a dead body. They don't know much. He's a recently dead guy, and they don't know much about him, but they don't know anything about him. But anyway, they just push on, and they go to the water hole, and they see a wagon there, a covered wagon, and but no horse. And so they go down there and they investigate, and what they discover is that the dead guy that they saw must have been the husband of the mother that's in the wagon. She's just had a baby a day or two ago, and the water hole has been destroyed. And since the family was on their own, the guy that died, he didn't know how to. He dynamited the water hole to try and get rid of all the dirt so he could get down to the water. And what he did is he destroyed the well. So there's no water. And they've got a real dilemma now. They've got a dying woman dying of thirst and malnutrition. They've got a baby. They've got about a half a dozen cans of condensed milk. And they've got their money from the bank. So what are they going to do? And what they do is the Christmas story. And it is stunning. It is stunning. Each one of them comes to a point where they have to make a decision. And the decision is the moment of truth for each one of them. One of the three is kind of an educated man, kind of like Breaking Bad. He broke bad. He had a good career, a good education, and something made him break bad, and he became an outlaw. He's the first to have to face the moment of truth, which he does. The second to face the moment of truth is the Walter Brennan character, the simple-minded character, and he does. And the third guy that has to face the moment of truth is purely evil. He cares for nothing but himself. The other two outlaws, he doesn't care about them. He doesn't care about anything except himself. But the moment of truth that he faces is about twice as challenging as what the other two had to face. And I'll just leave it to you to find out what happens, but it's stunning. Now, if you forget what I said and you get the John Wayne version, you're going to miss a big part of the story, because John Wayne was not permitted to have to deal with the moment of truth that the other three did. They faked it. The John Wayne version fakes what he has to do, downplays it, dilutes it. That's the right term. It dilutes it considerably, and it doesn't have the same message. The interesting thing is, I got so fascinated with the story, I went back and researched, where did it come from. It came from a guy who was a novelist a minor novelist out in Northern California. He was in basically the Silicon Valley area, or he was on the other side of the Santa Cruz Mountains, somewhere between, maybe like Half Moon Bay, someplace like that, between San Francisco and Monterey. And he wrote a number of stories about the West. And this one is the most memorable, but because it has been made into at least 3 or 4 versions of Hollywood films. And the one that, like I say, that's most valuable is the one with Walter Brennan, made during the 1930s. He's not the main character. The actors that play the other 2 outlaws probably had bigger names at the time. But I think people watching this video will know Walter Brennan better than the others. So anyway, it's Merry Christmas to you. And thanks for watching. Oh yeah, forget. Be sure to click the notification bell in the upper right if you want to be notified whenever I have a new video. Okay, Merry Christmas for 2020. Thank you.